Hi, everybody. Welcome to week 4 of online learning and the notes for this week. All right, so we're just going to finish up with lesson 5 in the textbook, which is all about animals and the animal kingdom. And we left off on page 11. So if you're using your green packet, you want to open up to page 11. If you are not using your green packet, like I said before, you can use lined paper or your spiral bound notebook that you can label Science Learning Journal. And just pay attention when I'm talking in each slide because you're not going to have to write everything down. If you have your green packet, a lot of the things are already recorded for you. So if you're writing something on a piece of paper, um, stuff this week isn't, we're not going to get too deep into the vocabulary for the different phylums. We just really wanted to expose you to these different animals and learn just a little bit about them. The quiz at the end of the week, I will give you a list of vocabulary words at the end of the slideshow, and you can use that to help study for your quiz. Right, and then the quiz is going to be last week and this week. All right, so on page 11, these are the different phylums within the invertebrate category of animals. So if you remember the levels of classification, it starts with domain, and then kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. And it gets more specific and more specific as you go down. So we're in the animal kingdom, and now we're going to look at some specific phylums. The first ones are called the annelids, phylum Annelida. These are the segmented worms. And just some examples of these worms are earthworms and leeches. There are so many different species of earthworms and so many different species of leeches, but these are just general terms for them. Some characteristics that they share is that they all have these segmented bodies. They also have a tubular gut system, and they're really important in our soil and the health of our soil, the earthworms. So the worms basically eat food, and when they break down the food, that puts the nutrients back into the soil, which is really important for the plants. Leeches, there's over 700 different species of leeches. Majority of them are considered parasites. So what they do is they feed off of the blood of warm-blooded animals. So they also can feed off the blood of fishes and amphibians too. So they latch on and they feed from the blood. So somebody maybe have experienced this if you're ever swimming in a stream or a river, and you have these little kind of slimy things stuck to you. You might have experienced this before. I have never personally experienced a leech, but they're pretty cool. There's some really big ones too. All right, so those are the annelids. The next phylum is called Arthropoda. This is a really cool, interesting phylum. So for your project this week, this one might be a cool one to look more into. But general examples are insects, spiders, lobsters, shrimp, anything that has an exoskeleton. So that's a feature that they all share is an exoskeleton, and they also have many jointed appendages. So antenna, some of them have claws, some of them have 6 or 8 legs, depending on which one. Here's some more cool examples. There's a huge variety of these animals, over 1 million species of arthropods that have been identified. 90% of them are land dwelling, so the insects. But the marine arthropods are really cool as well. Those are your crabs and your lobsters and your shrimp. So crabs, lobsters, and shrimps have that really thick exoskeleton that you're familiar with. If you've ever eaten them, you have to crack through it. But even things like bumblebees and flies and butterflies, it might not necessarily seem like this hard outer shell, but they do have an exoskeleton. They don't have an internal skeleton like we do and some other animals do. All right, so those are the arthropods. The next phylum are called the cnidarians. You don't pronounce the C, it's just cnidarian. Some characteristics that they all share is they all have a soft body with no protective armor. They have stinging tentacles. That's how they protect themselves. And they all have radial symmetry. If you remember from last week, radial symmetry is when it's around a center point. So you want to think of like spokes on a wheel. So the jellyfish, you can see this. But another great example is the starfish. Oh, I'm sorry, but the starfish isn't a cnidarian, but the starfish has a radial symmetry as well. Anyway, so the cnidarians, in general, they're going to be your anemones, your coral polyps, and the jellyfish. All right. And they're very soft. The coral has adapted the ability to build the coral, which is almost like a rock, and they live inside of it. But they also have the ability to sting predators as well when they come out. So they come out, they can poke their tentacles out to get their food, and that's how they can sting and capture their food as well. And then we all know about jellyfish and how they have their stinging tentacles. So that is what they have in common. But yeah, there's over 11,000 species of these guys. Very, very large kingdom. I'm sorry, phylum. All right, next up is the echinoderms. Echino. You don't pronounce that CH, it's a hard C. Some shared characteristics is they have spiny skin, right? So they feel kind of sharp when you touch them. And they all have this water vascular system to move. And they move with these things called tube feet, which you'll see in the video this week. So examples are going to be your starfish, sand dollars. If anybody's ever bought a sand dollar at a store down at the beach, or maybe you found one, those are the shells of the sand dollar. This right here is what a living sand dollar looks like. They have these little soft kind of tube feet that come out, and they can move and they can eat. Right? A sea urchin, they have these spikes, but they also have the tube feet to help them move. Starfish, and then this is like this really crazy starfish. Here's some more pictures. A sea cucumber. We were going to, if we were in school, the animal lab has you observing a sea cucumber, and they're really, really strange creatures. But I have a great video this week where you'll get to observe the sea cucumber kind of crawling around on the ocean floor. But anyways, they've been around since the Cambrian period. This is 540 to about 488 million years ago. We have fossils of the echinoderms. This is a depiction of an extinct echinoderm that they have fossil records of. So they've been around for a long time. This is a picture of the underside of a starfish. Those are all the little tube feet. Okay, and again, you would have seen this in person if we were in school. Womp womp. All right, phylum Mollusca. They're also called the mollusks. These are going to be your snails, your mussels, your oysters, and then octopus, squid. These are all the mollusks. Some things that they have in common, some of them have this shell that they actually build themselves. And then some of them do not have a shell and they have other means of protecting. But they all have a very soft body. And they have a thing called a mantle and a foot, which you'll learn about in this week's video about the mollusks. So here's some other cool pictures. Octopus are, I think, one of the most amazing creatures on earth. I saw one once when I was scuba diving, a little tiny one, and it landed on a piece of coral and disappeared in front of my eyes with this camouflage. It was amazing, amazing experience. But oysters can make the pearl, right? Here's pictures of some squid, and then we also have a lot of land mollusks like the snails. All right, so there's again very large phylum. There's around 85,000 species, and then we have so many between 60 and 100,000 species in the fossil record. So these go back really, really far as well. All right, the nematodes. These are worms. A lot of them are parasites. They're called roundworms. Um, and ooh, that's right. That's what it says in your notes. It says soft body. It's some have an outer protective shell. That's an accidental repeat from the mollusks. So if you are using your green notes, cross that out and just write in parasites. You can just write free living roundworms. Those are the two different groups. So you might have heard of pinworms before. Kids can get them. Heartworms, we have to get our pets treated for heartworm. And then there's free living nematodes in the soil. A lot of them are super, super small. They're microscopic. This is a picture of an eye. Somebody has a parasitic roundworm in their eye. All right, but these are to get this parasite. It's usually from drinking contaminated water. So we don't really see people getting infected with these very often around here. The porifera, these are the sea sponges. So not a lot of examples because they're all just different species of sea sponges. There's over 5,000 different species of sponges. And the thing that they have in common is that they're filter feeders. They don't move, they only move at their larva stage, and they basically pull the water through their body. They filter out any kind of particles and nutrients, microscopic organisms, bacteria, etc., that's in the water, and they basically push out the rest of the water. So they eat the stuff out of the water. So they help kind of clean the water. All right. The platypelemines, all right, these are the flatworms. Some of these are parasites, like a tapeworm. If you've ever heard of tapeworms, our pets can get tapeworm, people get tapeworm too. These are free living planarias. I actually had one of these in a microscope last year when I had my pond water sample. They're really cool watching to swim around. These guys can reproduce by fragmentation. And then there's also free living flatworms in the ocean, marine flatworms, and they can be really, really pretty and colorful. I'm going to post a video on these guys for enrichment this week if you want to watch it. They're pretty interesting. All right, so those are the invertebrate phylums. And then at the bottom of your page, you're going to see this box. These are the vertebrate categories. There's only one phylum in the vertebrates. They're just called chordata. It means they have a spinal cord. And this is kind of general, same information as the vertebrates, because most of the vertebrates are this phylum. And then they're divided up into the classes. Remember, classes is the next category down. I just want to kind of talk about these really quickly. If you're writing your stuff down on a notebook paper, you don't have to write this stuff down. I'm not going to put it in the quiz. A lot of you have learned about this before throughout your childhood because we're more familiar with these animals. So I just want to talk about them really, really quick. Okay. Amphibians, what they have in common is they live on land and water, and they have thin skin that must stay moist. Okay. So these are frogs, toads, salamanders, and newts are the general categories of the amphibians. All right. The reptiles, they live on land and they lay eggs that are protected by shells, and they're all covered in scales or plate-like scales. All right, so these are going to be your turtles, your crocodiles, your alligators, your snakes, and all your different kinds of lizards. This is a Komodo dragon. There's a really cool Planet Earth video on this guy if you've ever seen it. And again, these are going to live all over the place. All right, birds. Everybody knows about birds, but what they have in common is they have hollow bones. They all have feathers and wings, but they do not all fly. I think that's a common misconception that all birds fly. There are some flightless birds. Penguins have modified feathers that keep them warm and dry. So they basically repel the water so that it doesn't absorb, and that's how they can live in such cold environments. All right, and they lay eggs and they incubate their eggs. That's what they have in common. And we all know there's so many different kinds of birds, and they're all over the world. And then the mammals, we are mammals. And a lot of the animals that you're familiar with, our pets are mammals. Well, most of our pets, unless we have some reptiles or amphibians. But then some categories that maybe you weren't so sure that were mammals were bats are mammals, whales are mammals, dolphins are mammals. Okay. And what they have in common is they feed their young with milk. They have hair at some point in their life. That's in the warm blooded. Okay, so those are the characteristics that all the mammals have in common. And then the last class of the vertebrates are the fish. All right, all fish live in water. They either have bones or cartilage. So the fish is such a giant category that they are broken down into a bunch of different groups. But they're all cold blooded and they all have gills. Okay, here's some kind of strange. This is like a blobfish. Eels are fish. Sharks are fish. Um, and then obviously all the different fish that we're familiar with. All right, so that's it for this week. Again, please reach out if you have any questions for me, and if you're having trouble with any of the assignments. Let's see. All right, everybody have a good week.